In the Great Smoky Mountains lives a group of people whose lives have changed little with the march of progress. They are a symbol of America's conquest of the frontier. Living in log cabins like this one nestled on the side of the hill, they till the soil by the same methods their grandfathers used. Many of them have never traveled further than the few miles to the nearest town. Its main street, like most main streets, is a row of red brick buildings. On Saturdays, they come to town, they say, to trade. But trading is only half the reason, for here they see their friends and listen to a traveling evangelist. They are a simple people, eking a meager living from their small farms. Their faces, though older than their years, seldom reflect an unhappy spirit. One of them said of this preacher, "He's a regular wash-foot Baptist, the powerfulest you ever saw in the world." The mountains have put their stamp on the old-timers. You can see it in their faces. They are a genial lot, hospitable and obliging in an unreckoning way that is seldom found in the 20th century. Perhaps that's because most of them still live in the 18th century. In spite of their poverty and isolation, they are naturally capable, eager to learn and easy to uplift. Today they are face to face with a mighty change. The crowd overflows the sidewalk now. A few pass by, but most stand respectfully while the preacher builds to a climax. Not all enjoy this weekly contact with the 20th century. Some rarely come to town because it's too far to walk. They remain at home in the security of the hills. Among them are the Caswells, typical mountain folk, large family, most of them still at home. First, there's Ma Caswell. She and Pa built their two-room cabin almost 50 years ago. Ma dipped snuff. Pa chews tobacco. And here are 5 of their daughters. Pa Caswell picks up a little cash by making furniture. He uses the same tools his grandfather did. A foot lathe helps him turn the rugs for the legs. The leather thong rotates the wood as he rounds it with his chisel. This homemade contraption is an ingenious device for holding the wood while he cuts the first rough shape with his draw knife. Pa is usually too busy doing something else to fill an order in less than a year. Next, he splits white oak into almost paper-thin sheets. These sheets are then cut into narrow strips for the seat he is weaving. All the furniture in the picture is the product of his handiwork. There are few Negroes in the southern mountains. Emilus Seiler is one of the few. Born in slavery, he now owns his own little cabin and spends his days making mats out of corn shucks. Here, he is soaking them in water to soften them. After the braid is plaited, it is wound round and round, sewing as he goes, his needle threaded with a wooden split. Emilus sells his mats to tourists for 35 cents. They are the nicest made in the county, and he is proud of them. The Duncans' little cabin, high on a hill surrounded by corn, was built by their grandfather. Virginia is the only girl. Since her mother is an invalid, she runs the house for a family of 6. She is up early to build the fire in the cook stove and fix her father's breakfast and the lunch that he will carry with him. It's only 4 in the morning, but Dad has a long way to go to reach the quarry where he works. Although clan loyalty is strong, outwardly they show little domestic affection. He takes his lunch and bids her goodbye. During the summer, when days are long and most road work is done, he holds 2 jobs, works 12 hours a day, makes about $65 a month. This extra cash is a godsend through the winter when work is scarce. Virginia's mother tries to help by making quilts and rugs. Although her hands are badly drawn from arthritis, she does some beautiful work. The baby Ronald watches his mother as she gets out her needle and thread to begin the final steps on a wool rug. She has previously threaded bright little squares of wool into a long chain. Now she circles the chain round and round like a jelly roll, just as Emilus did with his corn shucks, sewing it in place as she goes. The work is slow for arthritic hands, but when she gets through, she will have an extra $1.50 to help put the children through school. This is worth a good deal of sacrifice to the Duncans. Although Virginia is only 12, she sets about her daily tasks with the calm of a grown woman. Doing all the housework isn't as bad as it sounds, for here there are no windows to wash, no carpets to vacuum, no bathrooms to mop. Housework is mainly sweeping the floor, making the beds, cooking, and washing. Big brother Alan, just 17, thinks he's most nigh too growed up to be going to school. He likes to feed the pig and chicken, milk the cow, and plow the fields. Middle brother Richard, age 9, is already a big help. One of his duties is to tote the water from the spring 300 or 400 yards down the hill so Virginia can wash the dishes. Washing dishes, to many girls Virginia's age, is a dreaded task. To her, it's a part of the daily routine, and she sets about it without much ado. Dad has arrived at the quarry where he runs a jackhammer. This is exceptionally strenuous work and requires a special mask and goggles to protect him from the dust. With Dad at work from sunrise to sunset, Alan must see that the family is supplied with firewood, not only for cooking, but to keep them warm. Few mountain people own their own horses or mules. Alan borrows one from a neighbor and hitches a sled to it. Since sleds can go where wheels can't, almost every mountaineer has one or two. The runners are made of sourwood because it wears very smooth and doesn't fur up or splinter. When Alan reaches home, Richard is right on the job to help unload the wood. He and Virginia are starting to school tomorrow, and there are a dozen chores to do in order to leave the house running smoothly. For one thing, he and Virginia must do the washing. Virginia is already starting the fire under the black iron pot down by the spring. The Duncan children never grumble about their work or ask to put it off till later. They accept their responsibility without question. Richard partly fills the tubs for her, but the water in the spring is quite cold, so Virginia adds water, hot water from her cauldron. Almost none of these people have electric lights, telephone, or piped water, but they do have one distinct advantage over people of the same economic level in the city, one that's frequently forgotten. Tucked away in their little coves, they can earn a living and still keep that spirit of independence for which their ancestors crossed an ocean and braved the terrors of unknown mountains. Their chief trait is independence, for they come of the same racial stock that produced a Daniel Boone. The pace here is decidedly slower. Perhaps the fact that the children know nothing of nursemaids may have something to do with their comparative calm. Noticeably lacking are the screams, silliness, and tantrums so characteristic of many of our brilliant but high-strung little apartment dwellers. Here, the children have a large share in the lives of their parents, so very early they must get some sense of belonging to an active community. What these people need is trained leaders of their own. Richard and Virginia, with their proud, honest, sensitive faces, hope to be among that group. Corn is the main crop of the Highlander. Alan uses an old corn cob to shell the newly gathered ears. When his sack is full, he takes it to the mill. The water is led down in this wooden trough to the mill where it empties onto the top of the large water wheel. Overshot water wheels furnish power for many of the mountain grist mills. The miller's family has lived in these parts for 4 or 5 generations, were among the first settlers. He, like most mountain people, is a born trader. The corn kernels are dumped into the hopper. The 2 big grinding rocks underneath the hopper can be adjusted to make the meal either coarse or fine. The closer together, the finer the cornmeal. As they slowly revolve in opposite directions, out comes water-ground cornmeal. For this service, the miller keeps 1/8 of the ground meal. Mountain people love flowers, and everyone has a garden of many varieties. They take more pride in it than they do in their vegetable garden. Virginia picks a bouquet of huge yellow dahlias to decorate the house. It's apple cider time. Alan and Richard go up the hill to where the best apples grow. Some years, when the crop is good, they can quarts and quarts of apple butter. The Carolina mountains are by nature one of the best fruit regions in the East, but the mountaineer is no horticulturist. Trees die for want of pruning and spraying. The spring is in a lovely setting, but Alan, like his friends, is apparently indifferent to its beauties. "I can't see nothing in these views you city folks take on so about," he says. This apple grinder was built by his grandfather. The apples are pressed down through a network of nails and come out reduced to a pulp. Although time has stood still in the Smokies, and the natives retain their primitive ideals, speech, and industries to a surprising extent, and live without many modern conveniences, it cannot be repeated too often that they are not inherently backward, but are simply the product of their environment. Having finished grinding, Alan carries his bucket of apples up to the press his grandfather built, and dumps them into this box made of slats, which serves as a sieve. Blocks of wood placed on top of the apples fill the box.
And my narrow grave and ready, and some long
His weight on the branch presses the apples, and out comes the juice. Highlanders call cows beasties and cow critters. The Duncan's beastie hardly gives enough milk for 4 children, but when there's a surplus, Virginia knows how to turn. Pork fat is always cooked with string beans, which are on the menu daily in every mountain home. Few mountain cooks have heard of vitamins. They boil their green vegetables for several hours. Cornbread, too, is a staple of every diet. For meat, they sometimes kill a chicken, and in the winter there is pork. But meat, often or in variety, is seldom enjoyed. Virginia opens the broken door of the oven and puts in enough cornbread to last for the next meal. Today, they are having string beans, fried potatoes, cornbread, blackberry jam, and coffee. Tomorrow, there may be cabbage, biscuits, and applesauce, perhaps fried eggs. The main things they buy from the store are flour, sugar, and coffee. They eat in silence, for since infancy they have been schooled to hide emotion. Poor little Ronnie can't decide which he wants first, string beans or cornbread. The Duncans have bought their broom, but many mountain people make their own broom straws from wild sedge. Notice the wrapping paper on the wall. Newspapers are eagerly seized upon, not for the information they contain, but for papering the walls. Oil lamps are the only source of artificial light. Although they go to bed at 7 or 8 o'clock, cabins have few windows, and lamps are needed early. Their isolation makes it necessary for everyone to share the work. Even the baby is learning to do his part. There is a fascination about this life where a man is almost totally independent of the outside world, both for food and shelter. But such isolation is doomed to pass away, for today motor cars, good roads, and tourists are bringing Highlanders in contact with a new world. Sitting in the door of what they call the cellar, where they store their canned fruits and vegetables for use during the winter, Virginia cards wool, just as her 18th century great-grandmother did. Unlike her ancestors, she does not spin cloth with it. She prefers the dresses she can buy in the village. Her mother uses the wool to fill the she makes. Piecing quilt crafts still among the Highlanders, and like all-day sings, are a form of social gathering. There are many traditions connected with the different designs. Craft schools, which have been founded throughout the region, are trying to revive them. 1 out of every 10 over 10 years of age cannot read or write, but Virginia and her brothers have developed a genuine love for reading, and at dusk they gather round the lamp to continue from where they left off before. The newspaper on the wall is part of Virginia's handiwork. School starts early in the mountains, for in midwinter it must often be suspended for several weeks because of snow. It's late August and the first day of school. Virginia down the rocky path which leads through the farms of several neighbors to the one-room schoolhouse 2 miles away. Alan finished the 7th grade last year and would like to go on to high school in the village, but someone must stay at home with Mother. so he says goodbye to school and hello again to the land of high horizons.